Welcome to the Drunk Dietitians podcast, co-hosted by your favorite tipsy registered dietitians, yours truly, Sammy Previtt, co-owner of Dietitians of Palm Valley, and Jenna Warner, owner of Happy, Strong, Healthy. Us dietitian besties can't stand diet culture bullshit and love keeping it real. Our mission is for all humans to believe that they are made for so much more than chasing a smaller body. We are also here to share with you that food can be fun and pleasurable again. Although we're medical professionals, we are human too. We are not afraid to share our deepest secrets and how years of our lives were taken by diet culture. We started this podcast so no human has to feel alone in their journey towards food freedom. So grab your favorite cocktail and join us for our favorite casual happy hour and expect to laugh, cry, learn, and grow. Cheers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Drunk Dietitians. This is Jenna, and I am introing this episode solo because this episode features a very special guest who is near and dear to my heart, and there's really no words for me to describe how much this episode meant to me and how special it was to have this conversation and share this conversation with you guys. In this episode, we have interviewed my mom, Miss Lynda Stock. She is our special guest today, and we are airing this episode or releasing it on Mother's Day weekend because in this episode, we talk about a lot of things growing up, raising a daughter, things that I kept from my mom in relation to how I felt about my body, how to speak to other family members about what is appropriate to comment on a daughter's body, and all of the things in between. I shared with my mom for the first time some feelings that I had about how I felt in my own skin as a teenager and growing up, and the experiences that I had in Nordstrom's dressing rooms on Black Friday sales days that I never shared with her before. And I realize now that it would have been nice to have shared that with her sooner, but having the opportunity to share this with her in this conversation was just really special. And so if you have a daughter, if you are a daughter, if you don't, if you're not, this episode will relate to you in so many different ways and kind of touch on some very different points for each person that listens. But specifically, it is one to celebrate relationships between mothers and daughters, to really have an open and honest conversation, and to really just go, we went in places that we've never been before as a mother and daughter. And it was just really special. And I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Can't wait to hear what you think, and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. So welcome back to Drunk Dietitians. I am extra excited about this episode. I want to start it with a cheers with our first guest of the day.
Cheers.
Cheersing Sammy over here with the wine actually from my wedding, which is my mom's favorite, which kind of just gives away who is the first guest that we're talking to today. Today's guest is a person that's very, very special to me. Although I've known this woman my entire life, we're actually going to be having conversations today that we've probably never had before. So I'm pretty excited about that and really excited to introduce everyone to my mom, Lynda Stock.
Who's really nervous.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
So, Mom, can you tell us a little bit about yourself today, who you are, maybe what you do, your favorite food, you know, just a little something that people don't know.
All right. Yeah. Well, Mom, everybody knows that. I know Sammy as well from being just great dietitians and great human beings.
She's a follower.
I am a follower.
She's a dedicated, loyal follower.
Dedicated, loyal follower. Constantly trying to get everybody else to follow you as well.
I love it.
Yeah. So what I am a mom first, a wife for 35 years. I've got a great family. I love my mom, my sisters, my brother. It's just been a joy of raising my daughter and my son. A personal trainer,
there you go.
Pilates instructor, cycling instructor for 20 years and plus. Always trying to help people with just feeling good about getting to the gym. There's, I'm able to train all bodies, kind of. That was always my tagline.
Yep.
Never pretended to be a dietitian or a nutritionist because I'm not.
Even before I was one.
Even before the daughter.
Yeah, it was never in my wheelhouse. It was never something I was comfortable advising. So I would often refer.
What you just said there, though, that like fitness has always been a part of your life, right? Like you were always active even when you were raising me. But like, let's let everybody know that I was still raised on Pop-Tarts, okay?
True. And toaster strudel. And so
we're going to dive a lot deeper into that soon. But we start out each episode of Drunk Dietitians with a rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you to choose without thinking too long. Ready, set, wine or beer?
Wine.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Raw or vodka?
Vodka.
Snow or sand?
Sand.
Okay, moment of truth. Crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Crunchy.
Ha! That's
Damn.
not my team.
I'm a smooth girl.
And if you could have anything in this world in limitless quantities that's not money, what would it be?
Oh, sunshine.
Ooh, that's a good one.
A really good one. You should go live with Sammy.
Yeah, come on down to Florida.
You never know.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're very excited.
Me too.
Yeah. And I think, first of all, I wish I was in your guys' beach house drinking wine with you right now. I'm at my office and have a mocktail today because I have a lot of work after this. But we're just going to kind of jump right in. And the reason we brought Mom on, I'm just going to call her Mom because it's easier. Mom by association is just because, our relationship with food starts from a young age. And Jenna and I shared our stories of how our relationship with food developed and our relationship with our body and childhood. And of course, you, Mom, were a big part of Jenna's childhood. And we wanted to get your perspective on it kind of from an outsider's view pointing in. But before we get into some of that personal stuff, I love science. I know Jenna loves science. That's a big part of what we do and why we do what we do. So I do want to share just a few studies here with our followers and the listeners. And then we'll definitely link these in the show notes for anybody listening, just so we can, I think it's always important to have research behind what we talk about. Not that our discussion has to be based around research today, but just to let people know why we're talking about what we're talking about. So when we're looking at dieting, when we're looking at eating disorder specifically, I think it's important to look at the numbers with children. So, and just the numbers in general. So eating disorders have doubled from 2000 to 2006 to 2013 to 2018. The actual incidence of eating disorder has doubled in our country. And that's one thing that I think is huge to bring light to, because I'm going to use some air quotes over here. Every time I say that, then usually there'll be someone, if I'm speaking like in a room, they'll be like, well, the obesity epidemic, air quotes for people not watching, is also growing, right? And I think there's a lot of, this could be, again, a whole nother podcast in itself, but I think it's important to bring light to eating disorders being a psychological disorder and that all bodies can have an eating disorder. You don't have to look like you have an eating disorder to have an eating disorder. But bringing that back to adolescence, dieting is the #1 most common predictor of eating disorder in adolescence. So when we think of dieting, and where kids and adolescents are exposed to dieting, right? A lot of times it's family, friends, media, all that kind of stuff. So just being aware that that's the #1 predictor. Any thoughts of those two that I just shared there? You guys, I know I'm talking a lot, so I want to make sure.
I think that it's so powerful to hear those numbers because numbers don't lie, right? Like that's something that as behavior change coaches, to some extent, you and I, sometimes people need those numbers, and those numbers right there do not lie. And I think one of the biggest things that I just want to share is that growing up, I think the impact at home is so important. But my mom, and I can only speak from my own experience, never imparted anything that she may have felt about her own body onto me. And I still ended up kind of fucked up in that sense. So
that's media.
Right? Which is media, exactly. And it just goes to show you the family support is so important. And you think about the people that don't have that combined with the media and like how much they're working against, and just really like hearing those statistics and knowing how rampant this is just it's very sad.
Yeah. And I think it's the numbers are just booming, which is one of this, I don't want to say scary, but I guess scariest things about that. And that's something that as dietitians, if we don't look at that, like if we turned a blind eye to that, which and I'm going to just say it, like a lot of dietitians do, they just talk about weight loss only. And then they just kind of say, oh, like, don't worry about the eating disorder, like numbers growing. Like that's something interesting. Again, another episode in of itself. But so let's dive a little deeper then into some of the personal stuff, because we have Mom here. So
all right. So here's a question. And again, I want every listener to know that actually, Mom, can you say a little bit just about, first of all, I love you with my whole heart. And the honesty here is what's going to make, people really connect to you. But, how do you feel about your own body and, going through the pressures as a mom, but also like, let's be honest, when I was 13, what were you, in your 40s? Like low 40s? Like that's young. That's not so far off from where I am now. So with that said, you're still going through pressures of your own. In that sense, raising a daughter, and there's some other things that I'm going to kind of hit on with that too, but how was it for you to manage to some extent maybe how you were feeling in your own skin, and also being cognizant of my own emotions as well?
To speak to that, I think that I never wanted you to ever know or feel any angst that I had with my own self-image, which at times were great and sometimes not so great. I think I'm in better shape today than I was when I was in my 30s, raising you in 40s. But I never wanted you to ever see me diet, or not that, and I never really did, because every time I said to myself, I'm going to go on a diet tomorrow, I need to lose 5 pounds, I'd wake up starving and then like say, okay, forget it.
You can say the F word.
Yeah, you can say that.
Forget it. And I'm not, so, and my weight has basically been stable my whole life. And I attribute that to moving and being active.
Yeah. And not restricting.
Yeah. Really not.
She loves her wine. But so let me ask you this then, on top of that, being that you were so cognizant of it, which I can attest to, how did you have the information though to know to be that way? Because was there something that happened in your life or friends that you knew that kind of like imparted that information, or projected those feelings on their children?
Yeah, I guess in the past, anorexia, disordered eating disorders was really just beginning to show itself. And, I know that my husband was a chubby kid, and
by the way, let's just go there so that you mentioned it. When he was growing up, he was sent into the FBI as a kid, as he was about 13, I think it was.
He was like 11,
12, 10 years old.
Yeah.
So get ready for this, everyone. That stands for the Fat Boys Institute. At 11 years old, if you guys could see her face, right?
Oh my gosh.
At 11 years old, he was told at 11 that he was chubby, and that to play football, he needed to be strong, and that he needed to lose weight.
And he would go in before school for this extra.
Oh my gosh.
This is back in what year?
And then, being on, and he was also put on like diets and eating tuna and cottage cheese and things like that. And so I knew that was sort of in our, genetics, DNA.
We need to have him on next.
Don't tempt him. He's upstairs. I'm surprised he hasn't like yelled down right now. But so despite all of these amazing efforts, your awareness is something that I want to celebrate, because I think that's very hard to do. But despite all of these amazing efforts, that were made at home to raise a daughter without a focus on body image, let's just call a spade a spade. In our first episode ever, I talk about the struggles that I had with my body, and I've been much more open about them now. But do you remember any experiences like me crying in dressing rooms when we would go on Black Friday to Nordstrom and that fluorescent lighting shows everything, and clothes that fit my cousins didn't fit me, and my butt was big and my boobs were small, and the insecurities, and I was short. Like, do you remember those feelings? Or, my friends being really tall and lean and thin or whatever it was, and I was always athletic, and how we played that off as like, sports are great for you, but like, did that impact you at all?
Well, I think that, having you reminded me of that, I mean, there were those.
She shut that out.
There were those times, but I think as raising a daughter, I needed to just focus on the fact that you were an athlete and you were never going to have, 6 foot tall, giant, long legs. And, we always told you were going to grow, and you never did. You got past 5'4.5". So, that was just the reality of it. And so I never wanted you to feel anything less than beautiful and in your own skin. Now, obviously, I was trying to raise you proud and strong, and never wanting to refer to you. I mean, we've had family members or friends that say, oh, when you were younger, oh, did you put on a few pounds?
Oh, that used to spiral me.
And that would spiral you, and I would yell at those persons in your life that would maybe say that, and I would correct them, say, no, she's in great shape, you're not so thin, or you're so thin. It was either that, put on a few pounds at 12 or 13, or maybe she lost weight, whatever it was, but it's never, no, you're not thin, you're fit. I never wanted to refer to that as being thinner, and that was good. I wanted to be in good shape and healthy and fit and working your body, because that's what is going to maintain that inner beauty. And so as a mom, that I was always deflecting and trying to just spin any situation in a dressing room or amongst other people to just try to get you to accept you.
Did you ever, just because I'm now interested, did you ever remember like sitting Jenna down and talking to her after whoever that asshole, was that said that? I don't know them, so I can say that. Yeah. But like, did you ever sit her down and say like, hey honey, like, it's never okay for someone to make a comment about your body, so I'm sorry you had to deal with that? Or was it just kind of like in the moment saying things?
I could have been that quick on my feet. I think I addressed it more with the individual.
Yeah.
Making
this hard.
Really not coming from a place of anything but just no filter, just not really thinking what was being said to a 12 or 13-year-old girl who's, hasn't grown up yet and is dealing with body image. So I think that I kind of zoomed in on the offender. Mm-hmm. And maybe let you fend for yourself,
but at 12, no, because at 12 and 13, like there's a picture of me, I'm wearing a yellow bikini, and my family, it's a tankini.
You were 11.
I was 11, and my family will remember this. Like you look at it now, and I'm like this cute little chubby kid, but I was like so proud and excited to wear my tankini, because at that phase of my life, like none of that had like gotten in. Right. But you fast forward, right? And like we've talked before, you and I, Sammy, about, I've done everything from every diet that's ever like lived to experiment with pills and potions for weight loss, and like, those same family parties. Like I remember a Thanksgiving where I drank like a laxative tea or whatever it was before the Thanksgiving. I think my cousin and I might have done this together. I don't want to throw her under the bus, but drank that before, so that in my mind I was like, as I was eating, it was coming out. Like, how messed up is that? Like, I wasn't a dietitian yet. Like, let's put that out there. And when I was like super sick a couple of months ago at this point, or weeks ago, and I was having diarrhea from a virus, I kept thinking to myself as I'm laying in bed, like, I can't believe I ever put this pain on myself. Right? But that's what it is. And that's that messed up, impacted diet culture brain that, again, Mom, I love you, but like you didn't even know that was happening.
I really didn't, and I feel very ashamed.
Stop it.
I mean, I didn't, but I applaud your honesty, both of you, like your honesty about your experiences growing up and as adults. And a lot of this stuff, it's like, wow, I didn't you know, it's like, I maybe knew that you
Or insecure.
Yeah, whatever. But it just, I don't know. It just didn't really impact me that you were doing diets and that's something I just know. I mean, I've never been on Weight Watchers. I always thought, oh, I'd love to go to Weight Watchers. You know, at the time when I was in my 30s, and I think, but I only have like 4 pounds to lose. So it's still, you know, like it was just not anything I ever did or wanted to be involved.
My dad went once.
Yeah,
they told him he got like
his office did. Yeah.
They told him he got a certain number of points, and he blew all of them in his breakfast muffin, and then he never went back.
Sounds about right.
It was an office challenge.
Yeah, but like that's the culture, and I think that it's really interesting, and I don't want to throw you under the bus for not recognizing it, because I think that I did a great job of hiding it. And at that point in my life, it was really none of your business, right? Like you were done raising me.
Right.
At that point,
I was
on my own and making choices as an adult. But I think that that goes to show the true impact of social media, right? So like my mindset and my need to not be this athletic girl anymore and to be thin took it to extremes that I was hiding from people. And I think that's where, Sammy, your message is so strong, that nobody can be judged from the outside, right? Because you don't know what somebody's doing to either look that way or obsessing over to feel a certain way, or just ashamed to be a certain way. And again, I think that's a whole nother conversation. But, you know, someone as close in my life, there's no one closer to me than my mom, didn't know.
Times that maybe you were dealing and experimenting, you were also running from these conversations.
For sure.
To hide, I think in hindsight.
Would never tell you that. Yeah. I think part of it was being ashamed for a lot of reasons, but also ashamed that like I would have failed you, or that like, how could I be doing these things, right? So it's very interesting. It's an interesting thing. I mean, any moms that are out there listening, you know, you have any advice for any moms listening?
Just to be a good listener and to be I mean, I think moms, I'm going to generalize, but I think that, you know, if you're in your child's life, then there is no shame. There's nothing that you can say or do or anything that will turn me away. So to me, that openness is important. And there's reasons why you were hiding, but now you're not. So it's good.
No, everyone knows.
And I think as like we work with a lot of mothers too, that like there is no such thing as your child not being beautiful, regardless of what descriptor words we would use for their body, right? And so, and I think now, like I would say in 2019, like especially with social media growing, you'll see a lot more people talking about body positivity and it not being okay for family members and friends to make comments and whatnot. But like that definitely, at least from a counselor's perspective, looking at your story, Jenna, like whoever those people were, even though mom was like, no, like she's great. And she was being reinforcement in a positive way. Those comments are still going to be under your skin, right? Because the fact that somebody is calling it out and saying it. And then a whole nother one, which I know we're going to have a future episode on thin privilege, but that's a whole nother kind of can of worms to think about, is that generally speaking, between myself and then you, Jenna, as well, I still think we come from this place of, we call it quote, air quotes, thin privilege, but it's like more of a growing topic where it's not like you were in a body that was so large that you couldn't fit in a normal size chair with arms on it, right? Or like a airplane chair, like if you go on an airplane and you need 2 seats or things like that. And so that's something too, that when we look at eating disorder, when we look at these numbers, a lot of times there's people that are in much, much larger bodies that are getting oppression, fat shamed, and then people in smaller bodies thinking it's okay for me to say this because it's their fault that they look like that. And this is like a whole nother conversation I'm going on like a,
I'm ready.
but
Let her listen.
yeah, but it sometimes it feels a little uncomfy to talk about. But this is where when we say like all bodies are worthy of love, all bodies are good bodies, like I mean all bodies. Like we're talking about the largest body that you've ever seen to the smallest body. But again, we live in a world that like presses this smaller bodies are better bodies thought process. So and then again, when we have these family members saying things or media or whatnot, then it just continues to kind of like fuel that fire.
Think about that conversation right now with like your grandparents, and like I let my Nana rest in peace. The first comment she would say to any human being that she saw was either you look great or you've gained some weight. And like thankfully for my own self-esteem, you know, those comments to me were more of like, they were less negative for a large part of my life. But I know a lot of people that wasn't the case for them. And I can't even imagine how that has continued to impact their self-esteem or their efforts and impact their limiting beliefs. Like I talk about that a lot with my clients, where something's happened in your life where you believe you don't deserve to feel a certain way, right? And then we think back to experiences like that maybe if anyone listening has one of those, like know that these people were just not as educated as we are on this topic today to understand that making any comment, whether you think it's a positive one or not, about someone's body is just inappropriate.
And to be more thoughtful about that, I mean, I again, like in hindsight, I wish I would have addressed that with you one-on-one right then and there to just, but at the time, like you said, I think you just deflected it and you were just in love with your body at that time. You really were. And so
in my take,
you were adorable, and you know, and it was a fact. And as you grew up and you know became more of a young adult and young woman, you know, obviously things, body image changes, and there was a lot more exterior input. It wasn't insulated anymore. You were college. You were gone.
The competition is not any longer like local to a small town, right? Like we open up these doors. Sammy and I both went to Penn State. There's 40,000 undergrad, you know, like comparison syndrome is everywhere in every aspect of your life as you're trying to decide who you are and who you want to be. And I think that's really where the highlight of my demise of my self-worth really came to be. But it's only now like looking back on this very closely, which I haven't done for a long time. I kind of pushed that away because I didn't really want to believe that I had these issues. And I was actually recently on a podcast where somebody asked me like, why did you become a dietitian? And when I told her, she was like, so you didn't become a dietitian because you had a history of an eating disorder? And I was like, no, like I do know a lot of people go into this field to help others like them. But then like you look backwards and it's like the disorder wasn't characterized as like a clear cut eating disorder, but there's disordered eating since I was 13, right? So we think about that and we think about those experiences that now we're able to use to help other people and talk about it. But how many people have these experiences and are not talking about it to help other people?
Through the age?
Yeah. I mean, you took laxatives before Thanksgiving.
Like
at that time, you didn't think that was disordered, right? And so, and I never took laxatives. But I mean, I definitely had behavior patterns that at the time, like I was like, oh, I'm being healthy, which like, absolutely not. Like, and so you look back and you're like, oh, whoa, maybe I was disordered in my thought process or in my habits. And so, yeah, it's looking back and it's hard to do, like you said, like, and it's not fun. Yeah, like it's not a fun thing to do, but once you get comfortable with it and once you realize it, and I think the beauty is once you make peace with your body and with your relationship with food, then it becomes easier to talk about. And I don't think anyone's ever perfect. I don't think we're not saying that we wake up and look in a mirror every day and say, I love my body.
Right.
Like I really don't think that's humanly possible for most people, but feeling comfortable, respecting your body, understanding that it's continuously changing, that there's always going to be, different stuff going on with it. Like that is, what'd you say?
Menopause.
Yes. Right. Different stages of life. So.
And it will be. We'll bring it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that really the purpose of this episode is really to just open up the dialogue between family and friends. And I think if anyone can take anything away from this, is like setting expectations and boundaries, right? Like with holidays or family functions or parties, or even with your parents, like explaining and connecting how you feel in your skin, even if you're projecting something completely different out there. You don't know whose or what comment is going to really affect the rest of your life. And I think that if we can open the dialogue to these conversations, or show a little bit of extra grace in dressing rooms. I mean, I personally remember like crying on Black Friday when we would go as a family to Nordstrom. It was, I love Nordstrom. I'm not bashing you, Nordstrom, but I remember like those fluorescent lights in that tiny dressing room and these women knocking on the window. Do you need another size? And like, God forbid, I said, yes, I need the bigger size in front of all of these women changing. Like that was horrifying for me. Or sharing the dressing room with my lean, tall, skinny cousin who was fitting into everything. And maybe she has her own story of how maybe that wasn't true. But in my eyes, in my warped mind, she was fitting into everything that I couldn't, right? And so those experiences, when we look back on it, like really shapes the obsessive and compulsive tactics that build from there. So I'm not saying don't go in a dressing room with your cousin, and I'm not saying don't have these experiences, but also know that you're not alone if you do. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think you said boundaries, but I think it's like knowing what your triggers are, because the trigger might not go away, but how we react to the trigger, it can be hugely different. So for example, if there's a holiday coming up, or if there's a party coming up and that Aunt Cheryl's going to say some bitchy comment, getting ready for that and saying, okay, I can either, depending on my mood, I can change the subject. I can not fight back, but kind of defend my body and change the subject. I can choose to walk away. Like having ammunition ready for if we're specifically talking about like someone making a comment, I think is huge. And that's something I work on with my clientele of being ready. Because unfortunately we can have these wonderful conversations about all bodies of worthy are love and, et cetera. But the world and our culture still has a lot of paradigm shifting to do. So being able to react and feel confident is huge.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. Yeah, it's hard. It's important to give young women, girls, the ownership of that. Being able to say to Uncle
and boys
Sam
too.
that and boys too, that no, I love who I am, and no, I'm not whatever, and I don't know, just
fuck your opinion. Thank you so much.
Or like, can we just shift the compliment or the negative comment to something other than body, right? And that's where I think it comes down to, like, I always say, like, someone else's opinion of my body is none of my business. So they can say whatever the hell they want, but learning how to not let it get to you. Of course, we always care what other people think, no matter how hard we say we don't. Like, I could get 500 positive comments on a video, and then that one negative one, I'm like, I'm so pissed. And I can only imagine as the counts get bigger and the more comments roll in, how that'll work. But being able to, again, like, just take it away from the body. If you're going to compliment someone, compliment their smile, their laugh, their character, how they brighten a room. Like, we don't give a shit what size pants they wear. Like, what kind of person are they?
And someone posted something the other day on Instagram. And it was a size 27, I think. And it was like 6 different brands. I don't know if anybody saw this, but it was 6 different brands of the same size.
Yeah.
Every single pant was a different size.
Right, yeah.
So
yeah.
we like start like not caring about these things. Like it's wild. I spent my whole life trying to be a whatever size. And I remember like when I bought that size when I was at my tiniest, I now have to give them all away because that's not my body's set point.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yep. I had a client actually yesterday who has told me we were working on buying clothes that fit her body and not trying to change her body to fit her clothes. And she pulled out, like, she finally did like a sweep of her closet, and same kind of thing. She had like all the same size pants, but some were too big, some were too small, some fit perfectly. And I was like, so why are we letting that dictate like our happiness? Like, where is that coming from? I think that's really an important thing to look at. So that was a good point there.
I also just love this conversation so much too, because my mom and I have recently had conversations about like the new movement of nutrition, right? And how trying to help other people who are not as connected to this as you and I and our clients are, to understanding like the movement that is body acceptance and food freedom. And it's more than just hashtags, but like understanding like the detrimental impact and effects of dieting. And I think Sammy opened up this episode with statistics that are so powerful that I kind of want you to like reread again to like close out this episode.
Yeah.
To just like really drive home those points that it's the whole life cycle that matters. It's the external factors. You can do so much internal work, but if you're not prepared for the external, this is a good place to start. And like listening and trusting the people that love you to understand and to be your support system is huge. And I think my story could have been a lot worse if I didn't love my family as much as I do and have the support that I do have. And I think, again, like a lot of what was discussed today is the first time that you're hearing some of this.
Yeah, and some of the things that I'll hear for the first time are on social media, on your social media.
Yeah. Same with my mom. My mom would say the same thing. Like, she'll be like, wait, you struggled with that? And I'm like, yeah.
And it's not your fault.
But
we need you to know.
You. But if I look back on that, the times in your life, I could probably piece together the puzzle of, that was happening, but really just being unaware of it, So as a parent, you're like, well, I should have known, but
in retrospect now, but only because Jenna has posts about it, and then you're like,
and she's been.
I remember that.
Yeah. Now it's like, that thing. I knew you were into some teas and stuff like that.
Yeah, I found them in my house the other day when I was cleaning things out. I should post that so you can see it for real.
That'd be a good one.
But
pile of them.
Do you, before we have Sammy read those stats again, or like put any final thoughts in there, is there any advice or feelings or things that you, just reflecting back on my childhood, your own childhood, your experiences, and just kind of tying this all together?
That's a hard question. There's so much.
She's gonna be thinking about this for
days. I know there's so much. I'm not always on my feet, but thinking about my childhood and our holidays, it was always revolved around food. I mean, it's just what. And there was always those people in your life that would call you out if you gained. Did you gain weight? Like did you lose weight? It was always that, or if it wasn't directed at me, it was directed at someone at the table. So that's always there. And I guess it's just a way of growth, like learning about, you're referencing, your future podcasts and body image and body positivity, and how you would raise a child today with different dialogues that maybe I'm in that protective mode, like don't fuck with my daughter.
I love it.
I am gonna,
rip your face off.
Don't ever say that. What are you, out of your mind? Like, why would you say that while she's off in another room playing?
Coloring.
Like that's what that was sort of my role. Maybe today I might be a little bit more aware of speaking to you directly, Like that was not the appropriate thing to say. And how do you feel about your body? And maybe, changing the conversation. So I learned that today.
I love that.
From you guys. Yeah. Because, I was the protective lioness, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But in hindsight, maybe the dialogue needed to happen with you or your brother or my nieces or nephew, whatever,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard. It's hard to
being a parent's gotta be very hard.
That information out there and all this culture and this bullshit diet culture, which I am so on your team.
She's your number one fan.
I am just 100%, because diets don't work. I have friends and I have family that have struggled their entire lives and continue into their 50s and 60s with diet, chasing the same weight loss and not willing to, their bodies are always rebelling.
Yeah.
And so I'm all about that.
Do you feel good?
I do.
Okay, good. I was holding my little baby cousin the other day in front of my entire family and being like, we're going to raise you to body positive and love your body.
Yeah.
Fit, and no one's going to tell you what to eat. Everyone's looking at me and I'm like, it needs to start now.
Yes. Yes, it does. It does. Absolutely. But you, Lynda, had such a great relationship. It sounds like relationship with your body to be able to say some of those things. And that's one thing I do want to validate for any listeners. We work with a ton of mothers who aren't comfortable in their body. And it's really hard to raise someone to be comfortable in their body when you're not. Depending, again, this is such a spectrum. So this isn't like you either are or you aren't. Of course, we all have our own things about our body that we might want to change. But so it's really hard, especially nowadays with media, like for mothers that if they're stuck in that diet culture, like some of your friends you're talking about, if they're trying to raise children and they're prioritizing thinness and weight loss, and then little girl sees that, it kind of perpetuates. So it's definitely.
Yeah. And just to mention one thing I've seen, I think in maybe some of your posts, Sammy, about, or maybe it was Fuck Diet Culture Friday, where mommy's eating certain foods.
Yep.
And, but these are mommy's foods. That's not, to me, that was like, oh my gosh, that's like.
Can't happen.
Yeah.
No, all foods.
Wasn't always, and I'm not always comfortable in my own body. I mean, I am a fitness instructor, and that stems from wanting to maintain a certain image and to be, in good shape, etc. But also, to manage my own.
It's okay to admit that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think body love and body respect are two different things too. Because I think with this body positive movement, a lot of people's messages, they'll be like, just love your body. That, like, and then also when they're pairing that with a weight loss message, woo, we got a lot of work to do. But if we're talking about respecting our body, saying like, I don't feel comfortable right now, but I know that you need nourishment or movement or mental help or, hydration or whatever it is, like respecting our body and loving our body are two different things. And sometimes we don't love our body, and that's okay. So anyone listening, like that is absolutely okay.
I love my body every day.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. But I respect it. It gets me from A to B. And
we talk about it now as practitioner to mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's not. And of course, menopause is a whole different, thing.
Yeah.
That has kind of thrown me for a loop. But even so, I think no matter what I was feeling, I never wanted my children to know that I wasn't 100% in my body. I want you to not experience that and not. So I protected you from that.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful for it. And I think that it's important for anybody listening to know that no matter what your circumstances were growing up, you never have to feel bad for where it brought you, right? So my circumstances and how I was raised was perfect to set me up for body love and positivity that I don't have every day, right? So, it's things happen in external factors, and if we can equip people with the message and the positive movement behind it and the understanding and, you know, the safety net, I think that's a goal of this podcast and this episode for sure.
I love it. I love it. So if you want me to, I'll close out with some of those facts again. And we'll, like I said, we'll link these in the show notes too, so people can actually go to these specific studies, because I'm very much so paraphrasing. One that I didn't share, but I think can get tied into this as well, is just thinking about if we are chasing weight loss, right, through fad dieting. We know that dieting is the most consistent predictor of weight gain. Most studies, 2/3 of dieters will gain back their weight they had originally lost and then more. So if the whole reason we're doing diets in the first place is to lose weight, which we shouldn't be, but that's, again, another conversation, then we know that it's probably not going to work. So then if we look over here at more stats, 35% of dieters develop disordered eating behaviors, and 30 to 45% of those dieters will progress into full-blown eating disorder. And then going on to the last ones that I shared previously, eating disorders have doubled from 2000 to 2006 to 2013 to 2018. Dieting is the most important predictor of eating disorder in adolescents. And one last one here is just bringing awareness to the word eating disorder. I think a lot of times people think of that as anorexia nervosa and bulimia, thinking about somebody looking emaciated or visually looking like they have an eating disorder, but eating disorders do not discriminate. Atypical anorexia is an emotional disorder characterized as obsessive desire to lose weight. That could be in any sized body. And orthorexia is an obsession with eating foods that are considered, air quotes, healthy. So those are two very much so newer eating disorders that I think are running rampant, and diet culture is just lighting a fire under those and continuing to spread those. So with that being said, with all those fun facts,
I think that counts as our nutrition tipsy of the day.
Yeah.
That diets don't work, but we can always focus on behaviors, right?
Yeah. And I think it comes down to too, like, if you want to, right? And I hope with every client I work with that they want to improve their health, but that is an option. So when someone points a finger at us and tells us, work on your behaviors, like, that's up to you. So if you want to do that, then yeah, we can work on behaviors. But do you have to do it? No, not necessarily. It's a choice for sure. For sure. All right. Well, any other closing thoughts on your end?
Thank you, Mom, for being here.
I like the tipsy of the day.
Right?
Yeah. Cheers to diets not working.
Cheers to diets not
Cheers.
working. Enjoying
Cheers.
time, being open with family.
I love it.
Thank you for being here. I love you. I love
You
you,
too.
Sam.
You too.
I love you guys. I want to formally meet Lynda.
I know. I feel like you two know each other forever.
I know.
We'll come see you.
They want to
Perfect. Perfect. Come on down.
All right. I love you all. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for listening and being here with us. I am virtually cheersing all of you. We absolutely loved sipping on a cocktail with you and sharing as many nutrition tipsies as possible during this episode. We know there are a ton of pods out there, and we are so appreciative of your time that you spent listening to us today. Please be sure to check out the show notes for episode details and all of our guest information. We promise to keep bringing you the best and the most knowledgeable and fun guests we possibly can. Please be sure to subscribe, like, share, and post if you enjoyed our content today. And visit us on Instagram and Facebook at Drunk Dietitians to find out what is up next for us on the pod. We absolutely love you. We appreciate you and can't wait to spend more time cheersing with you soon.